this video, I wanted to show off some of my favourite presets in the Eventide H9, along with my Harley Benton 8-string guitar that I bought off eBay for £69 and then put into a GADADGAD tuning. So that's going from the lowest string, it's going G, A, D, A, D, G, A, D. Considering that these Harley Benton guitars only cost about £130 brand new, I was pleasantly surprised to find that it actually stayed in tune, that the frets were fine and the intonation was fine. But one big problem with it for 8-string use is that the neck simply isn't either wide or long enough. So in terms of width, that means that it was quite difficult to fret certain chords down the lower end of the neck because you just didn't have room for your fingers. And possibly a bigger issue, well, it is a bigger issue if you want to use it the way I want to use it, is that even in a standard 8-string tuning, so that would be F sharp on the lowest string, it was just too floppy to sound good. You just need to have a longer scale length if you're going to tune down that low and quite heavy strings. And even with heavy strings though, you just couldn't get enough string tension. And ideally, well, the way I've got my Ibanez Prestige 8-string tuned is normal tuning but drop E. So you've got a drop E on the lowest string, which makes it much better to use when you're playing with the bass. So you can fit in with the bass, because to have an E which was an octave lower than that on the bass, you'd have to have a really, really long bass, which some people can do, like Nolly from Periphery does it. Has got these expensive, really long neck basses, but most basses can't really handle that. So I tend to use the E on just like the normal position, and then you can go down lower on my 5-string bass. But that wouldn't work for Harley Benton. So instead I opted to put the lowest string upper semitone and use like a GADADGAD tuning, but with the lower strings on a G and A. One advantage of using the GADADGAD tuning is that it forces you to play differently, and it makes you break some of your existing habits. And sometimes you slip into certain patterns, chord shapes, or just general patterns. And sometimes you can come up with something surprisingly good you just wouldn't have normally played at all. It also gives quite a different flavour. So, using the whole GADADGAD on 8-string is something a bit different, but DADGAD is quite a popular folk tuning, and it gives a very distinct sound and feel as well, which makes you play differently. Probably the best known use of DADGAD tuning in rock music would be Kashmir by Led Zeppelin. But It's been used on a few other rock tracks as well. It does get used on other rock tracks as well, but generally you find it more in acoustic music. So it definitely gives a different flavour. One of the things about playing an 8-string guitar rather than a 6 or even a 7-string is that you can't really play like good power chords on the lowest strings. It's just too low, it just turns to mush. So it tends to make you play in a different way. So you tend to use the lowest strings more like drone notes or like single note rhythm notes, almost like you would play a bass. But you can sometimes, with its clean guitar, you can use it in full chords, but you need to be quite careful with the sounds. So you don't want loads of certain types of modulation sounds on the lowest string, or it just sounds like a mess. But what you can do is if you choose the right kind of presets and you set them the right way, you can do it so that it doesn't have too much, it doesn't lose too much clarity on the lowest strings, but you still have the effects applied to the higher notes. So it almost sounds like two different instruments playing at the same time. So hopefully you'll get an idea of what I mean in this next example. If you want to see some more examples of either using 8-string guitar or using the Eventide H9, I've got quite a few examples on my YouTube channel. And you might also, if you're interested in trying new plugins or new free instruments, you can go to witchpig.co.uk and I've got a whole load of free different effects plugins, utilities, contact instruments, and some videos on how to use them as well. So yeah, check that out at witchpig.co.uk. And here's my final example. Cheers.